All right, so we're diving into some fascinating stuff today. Listeners sent in a bunch of questions about naturally increasing HGH, human growth hormone. And, they sent over this article from topnaturalhealth.com. Looks like it has some interesting points.
Yeah, it's definitely a hot topic these days. More and more people are realizing that health isn't just about like not feeling sick. It's about feeling your absolute best,
Yeah,
functioning at your peak, even as we,
right.
get a little older.
And it seems like HGH has something to do with all that.
It really does.
It's not just for like teenagers, going through growth spurts, which is what a lot of people might think.
Right.
The article goes into how it affects metabolism, body composition, even our immune systems.
Yeah.
A busy little hormone.
It is incredibly powerful.
Mhm.
And you can totally see why people call it the fountain of youth hormone.
Okay.
I mean, think about it. As we age, we naturally produce less and less HGH, right? It's like our cells aren't repairing and regenerating as efficiently, and that's when we start feeling that dip in energy or,
Oh.
we see those telltale signs of aging.
Those outward signs.
Exactly.
Okay, so that makes sense. But how do you know if you have low HGH? Like if someone's listening to this right now, what are the signs?
Well, that's the tricky part.
Yeah.
The article mentions things like fatigue, increased belly fat, trouble sleeping.
Okay, so pretty common stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to remember that these symptoms
Yeah.
could be caused by a million different things, not just low HGH. It's all about connecting the dots, but not jumping to conclusions. You know what I mean?
Right. More investigation, less self-diagnosing. Got it. So speaking of connections, the article then goes into ways to naturally boost HGH.
Okay.
And the first one they hit on is exercise, specifically HIIT and weightlifting.
Interesting, right. Our bodies are practically hardwired to respond to these intense bursts of effort. Think about our ancestors. They weren't hitting the gym,
No.
but their lives were full of activities that required, short bursts of high energy hunting, fleeing from danger, that kind of thing. That surge of HGH, it's like your body hitting the repair and rebuild button after a tough workout.
So ditch those leisurely walks and pick up the pace, huh?
Something like that.
I like it. All right. But then they talk about how important sleep is, and not just any sleep. They specifically mention deep sleep as being prime HGH producing time.
It's true. And while those fancy sleep trackers can be helpful for understanding your sleep patterns,
The quality of sleep you're getting is just as important, maybe even more so, because things like underlying sleep disorders, like sleep apnea, for example, can really mess with the depth and quality of your sleep.
Interesting. And then they get into intermittent fasting, which they claim can increase HGH by, I get this, like 2,000%.
To a bold claim.
That's what I'm thinking. Like, that almost sounds too good to be true, right?
Well, there have been studies showing some pretty dramatic HGH spikes with certain types of fasting, but and this is key, it's not as simple as just skipping breakfast. The duration of the fast, the type of fast, and how each person responds,
Right.
all of that plays a role.
So not a magic bullet, but definitely a tool to use carefully.
Exactly.
Strategically. Okay, I'm with you. I see what you mean.
Good. All right, so then there's cutting back on sugar, which seems pretty straightforward. The article calls it the insulin seesaw. Sugar goes up, HGH goes down.
It's a good way to think about it, although it's a bit more complicated than a simple seesaw, because when you eat sugar, your body releases insulin to deal with it, right?
Right.
But if your blood sugar is constantly elevated, your body is flooded with insulin, and over time, this can lead to something called insulin resistance.
Okay, and what does chronically high insulin even mean?
Basically, it means your blood sugar is consistently too high, so your body's constantly pumping out insulin to compensate, and eventually your cells become less responsive to it.
So basically, we want to keep our blood sugar balanced. Got it. Keep those levels steady. All right, makes sense. Now, the article also gets into supplements, which I know is a topic a lot of people are curious about.
For sure.
But it's important to be cautious with these, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. The supplement world can be a bit like the Wild West, A lot of snake oil out there.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it. So how do we separate the hype from what actually works? Because the article does mention a whole bunch of supplements.
Right. So instead of going through them one by one, let's group them based on what the science actually says.
I like that approach. Much better.
Good. All right. So first up, we've got amino acids like L-arginine and L-glutamine. Ever heard of those?
I have, yeah. They're supposed to help with muscle growth. Right.
That's the idea. And some studies suggest they can stimulate HGH release. especially around workouts or before bed. But the results are a bit mixed. Some studies show a benefit, others don't, and it seems like dosage is really important.
So it's not just popping a pill and like, bam, HGH through the roof.
Not quite. It's about understanding how these things actually work, the mechanisms, because everybody's different.
Makes sense. What else is there?
Okay, so then you've got things like alpha GPC, which is thought to impact HGH release, possibly through its effects on neurotransmitter.
Neurotransmitters, wow.
Yeah, it gets pretty complex. And then there's GABA, which we talked about a bit earlier. That's the one that helps you relax and promotes deeper sleep, which indirectly can support HGH production.
Right, because of that deep sleep connection.
Exactly. It's all about optimizing those natural peaks and valleys of hormone production throughout the day.
I see. So kind of like setting the stage for your body to do its thing.
Exactly. And speaking of which, we can't forget about melatonin.
Ah, yes. Everyone's favorite sleep hormone.
Right. Now, while melatonin itself doesn't directly increase HGH,
Okay.
it does improve sleep quality, as we know.
Right.
And better sleep means more of that deep sleep.
Where the magic happens.
Exactly.
Gotcha. So it's kind of a roundabout way to support HGH.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, the last couple of things on the supplement list aren't really supplements at all. They're more like lifestyle factors.
Oh, like what?
Well, they talk about how excess body fat, especially around the midsection.
Ah, the dreaded belly fat.
Yep, that can really throw things out of whack, hormonally speaking.
How so?
Well, visceral fat, that's the kind that surrounds your organs.
Yeah.
It's actually metabolically active.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it can disrupt your hormone balance, including HGH.
So less belly fat, more HGH. Got it.
Pretty much. And then, of course, there's stress.
Oh, yeah. Stress is the worst.
It's a killer, literally. Chronic stress releases cortisol, and that can interfere with HGH production.
So chilling out isn't just good for my sanity.
Right.
It's good for my HGH levels, too.
Exactly. Even just taking a few deep breaths throughout the day can make a difference.
So less stress, more HGH. Got it. Makes you want to book a massage right now.
Right. Or at least take a few deep breaths.
Seriously, though, we've covered so much ground here. Intense workouts, sleep, sugar, supplements. For someone listening who's thinking, okay, I'm ready to boost my HGH naturally, where do they even begin? What's the most important thing to focus on?
Well, I think that's the million-dollar question, right? And honestly, there's no one-size-fits-all answer here. Our bodies are just not that simple.
Right. Everyone's different.
Exactly. What works wonders for one person might do nothing for someone else. It all comes down to things like your age, genetics, lifestyle, all of it.
So many factors.
It's complex. The biggest mistake people make is thinking of HGH as this like on-off switch.
Yeah, like you can just flip it on and boom, more HGH.
Right. It's way more nuanced than that.
So more like a dimmer switch with a bunch of different settings.
Exactly. And that's why if someone's really serious about optimizing their HGH, the best place to start is actually with a healthcare provider. Get some blood work done, establish a baseline.
Okay, so know your starting point.
Exactly. Once you have that information, then you can start experimenting with these different strategies we talked about. See what moves the needle for you.
I love that. A personalized approach. It just makes so much sense.
It's the only way to do it, really. Working with your body, not against it.
Absolutely. Well, before we wrap up this deep dive on HGH, any final thoughts for our listeners?
Let me see. We talked about how our ancestors' lifestyles, all that running and lifting and carrying, naturally kept their HGH levels up.
Right. They didn't have to try to boost their HGH.
Exactly. So maybe something to think about is, what are we doing in our modern lives that might be working against our natural HGH production? Just something to ponder.
Interesting. I like it. And if you're listening and you want to learn more about those supplements we discussed, head over to topnaturalhealth.com. They've got a ton of information on their site, and they've even got a special offer just for deep dive listeners, so be sure to check that out.
Very cool.
All right, everyone, that's it for this deep dive on HGH. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, stay curious.